Hey, Tennessee. Thank you for taking time, Patriots coming out here. What we're about today, this is a call to action to every Tennessean, the people that are out there watching on YouTube and later on recorded. This is a call to action. This is how we're going to take back Tennessee. I want you to imagine for a minute that government is actively talking about revoking the Second Amendment right to bear arms. They're actively talking about that in our legislative houses, that they're going to revoke the Second Amendment. Imagine, what is your response? What is your response when they say, everybody turn in their guns, and we're going to use all of the background checks when you bought your guns to find where you live. If you don't turn them in, we're going to come to your house and take them. So imagine what you're going to do in that. And what I would hope that you would do. You know, it's not time to take up arms because they're just talking about it. But what you need to be doing is calling and yelling at them and saying, you cannot do this. This is our right that's established in our Constitution. You can't revoke it. And they're saying, we don't care about the Constitution. We're taking it away anyway. We really don't care about the Constitution. In fact, we're going to strike it out of the Constitution so the next generation won't know about it. So what are you going to do? Now, that's your call to action when I teach you about what rights have been stripped of you already, that you don't even know that these rights have been oppressed for so long. Everybody's got a copy of the Tennessee Constitution that I brought out here. This Constitution is the least imperfect. There are rights in this Constitution that are not protected in any other state of this union. There are rights in this Constitution that do not exist in the federal Constitution. These rights have been so oppressed that they have been wiped from our collective knowledge. And there's a reason that government doesn't want you to know about these rights. It is the oppression of these rights that is at the root of all dissatisfaction with government. If these rights were not oppressed, none of this that's going on in this country could be going on right now. We would have election integrity. We would have secure borders. We would not have unlawful mandates of vaccine and mask. None of this would be happening. We would not have police brutality. We would not have, we're standing out here in front of Lincoln County Courthouse. We would not have corruption of our courthouses if these rights were not oppressed. In Article 1, that's our Tennessee Declaration of Rights, Article 1, Section 1, power is inherent in the people, and government is instituted for our peace, safety, and happiness. And to that end, we have, at all times, an unalienable, indefeasible right to reform, alter, or abolish government in such manner as we may think proper. That's Article 1, Section 1. We have a right to reform government. And I want the Tennesseans, that patriots watching me today, listening to this, I want you to start standing with me. I have been engaged in this battle for years, fighting alone. And I'm calling on my people to stand up with me. I'm showing you how we're going to fight, how we're going to get it done. I'm tired of fighting alone, and I would like my fellow citizens to fight with me and start contacting our representatives, start contacting the clerks of the houses that they're going to receive and consider and decide petitions and remonstrances from the people. Section 2 of the Tennessee Constitution, the doctrine of non-resistance is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. It is destructive of the good and happiness, slavish. It is absurd that we not resist the tyranny and oppression that is going on in this country. Take it to Article 1, Section 23. And this is our most powerful right that has been so oppressed that you don't know what this right is and you don't know how to exercise it. I'm the first person since the year 1850 to exercise this right with a petition received and recorded in the journals of both houses and announced on the floors of both houses in the Tennessee House and the Tennessee Senate. And the fact that I'm the first person in 170 years to exercise this right is prima facie evidence, proof positive, that the right has been oppressed and wiped from our knowledge. But I'm fighting to restore that, and I want you to stand with me and fight to restore this right every bit as strong as you would defend your Second Amendment right to bear arms. This right is more powerful than the right to bear arms. Let me give you an example. When I remonstrated to the Tennessee General Assembly, the result of that was the entire Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct, like 10 judges, were removed from office because that agency had been long protecting corruption in the judiciary. They took them out of office. One man. I did that. I was a Force Recon Marine for 8 years, and I can assure you, I know how to fight. And had I geared up in body armor and loaded up some 30-round magazines and gone down there and said, I want that reform, I wouldn't have got very far. And I would not have had those corrupt judges removed and that agency reconstituted. When they reconstituted that agency, they wiped out all the judges, took them out of office, and they put in 8 new judges and 4 attorneys and 6 citizens. That's incredible. Still corrupt, because the Tennessee Constitution actually prohibits judges from holding second offices of trust. It's still a corrupt agency, and they still protect judges, but it's still an accomplishment. Now, I did that as a citizen. Imagine what would happen if we all united and remonstrated together as co-signatures or co-signers, co-remonstrances to our general assemblies across this country, not just here in Tennessee. Imagine what would happen with that. In Article 1, Section 23, citizens have a right to peaceably assemble and to instruct our representatives and to apply to the powers of government for redress of grievance or other proper purposes by address or remonstrance. So we're going to get in and talk about that we have a right to instruct, and we're going to talk about this process. Here's how it happens. You get a group of citizens, like-minded people, which, pretty much all of us want things like, I don't know, election integrity. We all want that, right? We all want term limits. Those are something that transcends party politics. It transcends demographic. Man, woman, doesn't matter. We all want term limits, and we all want election integrity in this country. The citizens, not the establishment, but the citizens want term limits, and they want election integrity. So we all get together, and you find people that, and what we're doing right now, this is the right of assembly. What we're doing now, talking about, what are the problems, how are we going to fix these problems? This is the right of assembly, not street protests. That's not what the founders envisioned for assembly. Assembly is us coming together and we say we want term limits. And we specify, how we want those term limits enacted. Maybe we set in some exclusions that a senator or a representative may enjoy 3 or 4 terms if they're a really good one and if the people really want them. But very, limited exceptions to term limits, and everybody else gets 2 term limits no matter what. And we just lay down what is the redress that we want, and we express how that's supposed to happen out there, and then we get everybody to sign it. And I can guarantee you, in this country, if we had, 5 million people, 4 million people sign this as co-remonstrances, and we presented that to the General Assembly, they can't say no to that. Now, this right to instruct, in Tennessee, well, there's 13 states in this entire republic that have a right to instruct. And in Section 23, we have a right to apply by address or remonstrance. By address means an oral presentation. We have a constitutionally protected right to stand in front of our representatives and say we are not okay with these mask mandates. We are not okay with forced vaccinations by businesses. We're not okay with that. We have a constitutional right to stand in front of them and say those things. In Tennessee, we're only one of 3 states in the entire republic that we have both a right to present our instructions by oral address, and we also have the right to instruct. There's only 3 states in this entire republic that have both of those combined rights. That's why Tennessee is going to be ground zero for taking back this entire republic, because our founders in Tennessee protected us better than any other state in this union. They were well educated. They understood tyranny coming from North Carolina, coming from Virginia. And they decided, our forefathers here in Tennessee, and my fifth great-grandfather, my sixth great-grandfather were Tennessee pioneers. I'm well aware of what they felt. And coming down educated, they said, we're not going to have class distinction, we're not going to have tyranny and oppression, and we're going to document it and protect our children, our posterity, forever. So they laid it out, certain things in the Tennessee Constitution, like we have both a right to instruct and a right to apply. So what is this right to instruct our representatives? It's pretty simple. It means what it says. You have a right to instruct them. Now, whether they're bound to those instructions, they're not. We hire them, or we elect them to office to use their best judgment and to represent our interests in there. And so they decide. There was a debate in 1789, and you'll see I have part of my library up here. There's a Bill of Rights documentary history. These books are actually quite expensive. They run as much as $1,000 for a set online to find these. But this is our founders. This is history talking to you in these old volumes like this. And there's a transcript in here from August 15th, 1789. And in that transcript, they were talking about the Bill of Rights, and they were considering whether to include a right to instruct our representatives in our federal Constitution. And they decided not to, because they thought it would lead to factionalism and civil war. So they said, we're not going to put a right in there. But they talked about it for an entire day. And when they were discussing this, it was Representative Jerry, and it was much the same sentiment, I think, from James Madison as well. And he said, now, I don't think amending the right to instruct would bind us to the instructions. But he said, yet I believe that citizens have a right to instruct and bind us to their instructions. He said, do gentlemen not conceive where the instructions may be so general as to come from all of our constituents? If they do, it's the sovereign will of the people. For gentlemen will not contend that sovereignty presides in the legislature. The friends and patrons of this Constitution have always held that sovereignty resides in the people, and they do not part with it on any occasion. And to say that sovereignty resides in the people and they have not a right to instruct is absurd to the last degree. When we talk about this right to instruct, it binds them to consider. It's called the obligatory clause. They have an obligation to consider our instructions. And when we present those instructions to a legislative body, that whole body has a duty to vote on those instructions, whether to obey or not obey those instructions. This is the power that's inherent in us. This also comes down to our form of government. If you look at Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, it says, the United States shall guarantee every state a Republican form of government. This garbage that you hear coming out of these politicians, coming out of media in our democracy, we are not a democracy. We're a republic. And what is a republic? Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. A republic is that form of government where the administration of affairs is open to all citizens. The administration of affairs is open to all of us. That's what is fundamental to a form of government. In the Supreme Court case, 1876, United States v. Cruikshank, fundamental to a government, Republican in character or form, is the right of the people to petition. This is our form of government, that we have a constitutionally protected right to participate in government. And how we participate is by exercising our right to instruct and to apply to the powers of government by address or remonstrance. So we just find somebody amongst us who can articulate or who can draft how we present those grievances or proper purpose. A proper purpose is we want election integrity. we want term limits. Those are proper purposes, and we have a constitutional right to do that. There's another guy, Thomas Cooley, he was a 1883 Michigan Supreme Court Justice. Thomas Cooley. This book is a treatise on constitutional limitations, which rest upon the legislative power of the states of the American Union. This was written in 1883. This is a reprint of this, Library of Congress book. This is probably the most cited book on constitutional law in this country. And Thomas Cooley said, now it seems completely unnecessary that we should even have to write down that we have a right of assembly and a right to petition for redress of grievance. We shouldn't even have to write this down in our Constitution. It is so fundamental to our form of government. And he said, for this right to be oppressed, the people would have to be so debased and so servile as to no longer deserve any of the privileges of free men. Man, that is powerful, coming out of an 1800, early 1900s, late 1800s Supreme Court Justice from Michigan. He said, if you allow this right to be oppressed, you don't deserve any of the privileges of a free person. You don't even deserve to vote, according to Thomas Cooley. You don't deserve to complain about anything. You just sit down and do what you're told, because servile means eager to please. And just shut up and do what you're told. When Thomas Cooley says that, and I say to you that I'm fighting everywhere, in every legislative body that I can stand in front of, in our Supreme Court of the United States, in our Tennessee Supreme Court, in our Court of Appeals, in our courts across this state, I'm out there fighting for this because I am not servile. And the doctrine of non-resistance is absurd to me. I'm fighting. However you would defend the Second Amendment right, you need to step up and start fighting with me to restore the right of petition, the right to apply for redress of grievance or proper purpose. You need to be fighting with me for that. And I mean calling their legislators, calling your senator, your representative, and saying, you need to get on board with Gentry and get this right restored. We got some problems that we need to fix in this state, and we're not okay with you taking away our most powerful right, keeping this knowledge oppressed from us. How dare you? We need to restore this right in Tennessee. So this is what my work is about, and this is my call to action. And if you don't want to take this action, excuse me, if you don't want to take this action, if you don't even want to bother to call your representatives to restore this fundamental right, really, you have nothing to say to complain about anything in this government if you're not fighting with me on this. That's according to Thomas Cooley. That's what I believe in my heart. And so I'm asking anybody out there on social media, watching this later recorded on YouTube, the citizen patriots that came down to talk and have a discussion today about this, I need everybody to stand with me on this. And not just you. You need to take and learn what I'm teaching you, and you need to teach your fellow citizens. They need to know too. And when you express the same kind of patriotism, the same outrage that I have, and you express that to your fellow citizens, this is going to grow like wildfire. And we're going to set the stage here in Tennessee that we're going to take back our government, we're going to reform it, and we're going to restore our rights. That's what's going to happen here in Tennessee. And when we get this done in Tennessee, the other states will have no choice to follow. They're going to have to follow. And Tennessee is going to lead the way. The volunteer state is going to step up and step forward, and we're going to get this done. If I'm brought into office, one thing I guarantee term limits. There is no person in this entire country. Governor Lee said, oh, this is one of my top 10 term limits. Anybody heard anything from Governor Lee on term limits? I haven't heard anything. That was supposed to be part of his top 10. I guarantee it, and here's how. If I'm elected, I'll make a gubernatorial address to all the citizens of this state, and I will keep making addresses until I get every person to sign a memorial and remonstrance that the people assert their sovereign power, our right to reform, and our right to instruct, and we are instructing our representatives to enact term limits statutorily now, and to propose a constitutional amendment as per the Tennessee Constitution, that it goes to the next General Assembly and then the next gubernatorial election, and to the people that we want term limits. And if the General Assembly, if any one of them say no to the sovereign power of the people, they express themselves as traitors. And we will have them taken from office, if nothing else, in the next election. So I guarantee term limits. I will restore accountability of corrupt state officials. I will have every day a memorial, petition, and remonstrance day where I will sit down in the Capitol, and any citizen is welcome to come and apply to me for redress of grievance or other proper purposes. And those will be heard live streamed and recorded, available to the public on demand with complete transparency. And I will grant whatever redress is in my power if it is the right thing to do, if it is appropriate. And if I do not have the power to grant that redress, I will convene the General Assembly. For example, our General Assembly will not hear petitions or remonstrances complaining of our corrupt judiciary. Our legislative houses actively protect corruption in our judiciary, and that's why we have rampant corruption in our courtrooms across this state. And because our General Assembly won't hear them from the people, as governor, I will present it to them and say, this judge is corrupt, here's the proof. I'm advocating on the behalf of these citizens, presenting their remonstrance to this body, and I want this judge removed or I want him impeached. Nobody in this country will hear petitions as I will. And when we see this here in Tennessee, I think the governors of the other 50 states are going to look stupid, not hearing the people. I will restore election integrity. We're going to wipe the voter rolls clean in this state and get all the dead people off of there. And everybody's going to have to re-register with the same standard that you do to get a driver's license, which today is you have to show a couple of utility bills that you live where you live. You have to show Social Security card, birth certificates, prove you're a citizen. That's basic. We will wipe the rolls clean and restore them with verified eligible voters. And we're going to eliminate all software voting. And I think the most efficient method is to go to OCR readers. Y'all remember when you're in school and you fill out those little oval dots. There's no hanging chads with that. And it's the most important thing is it's auditable. And the election, I would recommend that it should be sample tested. And if there's any exceptions, then there's a full audit. But we sample test before the election is certified out there. I'll stand strong against illegal immigrants coming into this country, and I'm quite certain that many of the children, illegal immigrants that are being brought in here, are being brought in so that the state can enjoy Title IV incentive money coming from the federal government. I'm pretty sure that's the incentive as to why that's being allowed. But our borders, with me as governor, I will do my best to ensure that our borders are secure and that we won't have the federal government shuffling people into our state. And I'll stand strong against all unlawful pandemic responses. In Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Section 25, it says martial law. And the Black's Law Dictionary definition of martial law is control of civilians on domestic territory. Martial law in the sense of unrestricted power. Unrestricted power is there's no veto, there's no legislative debate. It's just one person saying, you're going to do what I say. So martial law in the sense of unrestricted power by military officers or others. Or others is governors, mayors, county executives. That exercise, or martial law in the sense of unrestricted power by military officers or others, is inconsistent with the principles of a free government and is not confided to any department of this state. And if that kind of power is not confided to any branch of this government, not even the legislature can do it. If that power is not granted to any branch of the government, it shouldn't be allowed in businesses either. People should be allowed the choice and make the best decision for themselves. We have had several liberals appointed to Health and Human Services and Education here in Tennessee. I will replace those with conservative constitutional Republicans over our agencies in this state. And here's the biggest one as governor. Every year, they propose about 1,500 pieces of new legislation every year. 1,500. I don't know how possibly they can think up that much garbage, but they do every year. And they pass about 900 of it. 900 of those bills are enacted into statute every year. I know how to read that legislation. I've been down there fighting against it. It's evidenced in the House journals already. You can see it on my YouTube channel. I know how to pick them apart. And I know how to recognize corruption when I see it. And I have the courage and I have the integrity to expose that corruption to the people and, and to state in writing, I'm not going to sign it. And I'm going to tell the people why I'm not going to sign it. And when that happens, they're going to look like fools for sponsoring this. This was a grievance when we declared independence from Great Britain for giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Pretended legislation is when it looks good. Oh yeah, we're going to do this. But when you actually read the bill, that's not what it's doing. It's lining somebody's pocket. It's giving more power to the judiciary. It's almost always for corrupt purpose in there. So my work is about restoring the voice and power that's inherent in the people. You know, when we look at President Trump's presidency, he did some great things. You know, worked to secure our borders. He reduced taxes, got us out of all these bad trade agreements. He did some fantastic things for this country. Does anything remain of his work? I don't think so. I think everything that Trump did has been undone with the Biden administration. Everything. And that's a shame. My work is not about one man. It's not about me. My work is about the people and restoring power that's inherent in the people. That you take back your right to administrate the affairs of your government. That you take back your right to reform, alter, or abolish. I don't think there's anything to alter. I don't think there's anything to abolish in our government. The form of government in our Tennessee Constitution, it's the least imperfect. Least imperfect out there. We have to fix some incredible problems in this state, and we need to start standing up for these. The Constitution that I passed it out to the live audience here, you'll see on the cover of it, it says last phrase of Article 1, Section 23, corrected by me. The last phrase of Article 1, Section 23 in the Tennessee Constitution, it actually says by address or remonstrance. This is the Tennessee Blue Book. If you go down to the Capitol, these are sittings free that you can pick up in front of the Secretary of State's office. And inside of this Tennessee Blue Book is a copy of the typed version of the Tennessee Constitution in here. The blue version is when I noticed this error, the blue version was in distribution. And since then, they reprinted it. So Secretary of State Trey Howgert is a traitor to the Tennessee Constitution because he knew the error was there and he had it reprinted again in this yellow edition. It astounds me. I have a court opinion. I shared it with one gentleman in the audience before we got started. I have a court opinion. I sued the speakers and clerks of both houses because it's not just wrong in the Tennessee Blue Book. If you download the Tennessee Constitution from the Secretary of State and General Assembly website, it says by address of remonstrance. And when they change that one letter, by address or, and they change it to by address of remonstrance, they literally strip us of our constitutional right to address them. And that's every bit as bad as saying give up your firearms. It's actually worse, in my opinion, to strip us of that right. So I sued them in court, and the court opinion I got is, well, they don't have a duty to have the General Assembly or have the Constitution on General Assembly website. There's no duty for that. And so I can't order them to perform a duty to have a correct Constitution on there. So nothing we can do. And the only thing they gave me was that they encouraged the General Assembly to make the correction. I've got a copy of that court opinion up here. You're welcome to look at it. Nobody's debating that the Constitution is fraudulently presented to the people on the General Assembly website. They admitted it. I've got a YouTube video of the court hearing. It's on my YouTube channel in the Tennessee Court of Appeals. And Judge Bennett's like, well, don't you think it ought to be corrupt? And the Deputy Attorney General, corrupt Deputy Attorney General, Janet Kleinfelter, oh, yeah, I guess so, but they don't have a duty. They swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and that's the highest duty. And they refuse to correct it. I just sent an email not a month ago to the entire General Assembly. I said, every one of you are traitors. You're in treason to the Constitution that you allow this constructive fraud to persist on your website and on the Secretary of State website. You're traitors. Fix it. One representative, Representative Bud Halsey, District 2, he called me up and he said he went and spoke to Chief Clerk of the Senate, Humphrey. And Humphrey said it's correct. Humphrey's a liar. Chief Clerk Humphrey is an attorney, and I'm calling him a liar and a traitor, and I dare him to try to come after me for libel or slander. I dare him, because he is a traitor, and he's had that wrong Constitution up there, committing a fraud on the people for many years, since at least, or this started in 1982, is when that first happened, is what I was told by a member of the House, is when that first happened. So since 1982, there's a constructive fraud that's existed on the people of this state. So other problems that are existing and why we have a breakdown. You cannot have justice if you can't raise your hand and say, I've suffered injustice. And justice is the fair treatment of the people. You can't have fair treatment of the people if you can't say, I've been treated unfairly, right? And that's the right of remonstrance, the right of petition. That's you raising your hand saying, we the people have suffered injustice here. Government is acting unconstitutionally here. So without that right restored, we're never going to have justice in this country. And every attempt at reform or getting the fair treatment of our people is going to fail until this right is restored. And that's why we need to defend this right as strongly as we defend the Tennessee Constitution. We have to fight to get this right back. Now, the other problem, you can't have justice if you don't have fair courts. And you can't have fair courts if you don't have judicial accountability. And there is no check of one branch over the other of any of our judiciary. It is an unchecked branch of government. No balance of power. And when you have that, you have tyranny. And that's what happens in these courthouses across this state and across this country, is we have corrupt judges oppressing rights, violating rights, extorting people under color of law. And we don't have any fair, like President Trump. Here's a perfect example. President Trump sued for election fraud in several battleground states, right? And every case was dismissed, and the basis of dismissal was, well, maybe there was fraud, but it wasn't enough to change the election, so you don't have standing, you don't have harm, you weren't harmed. That's what these judges said, all of them, across those several battleground states. Here's the problem. What happened to discovery? What happened to that? Let me see, let me discover, let me audit the results and see if there was fraud. Those judges skipped the discovery process. Trump's attorneys, I would say they're either incompetent or corrupt, because they didn't fight back on that point. They should have requested an evidentiary hearing, and they didn't. And you know why? The judiciary wants to control all the justice in this country. This right of petition can go to any branch of government. And the judiciary is jealous of that power, and they want all the power to dispense justice themselves. That if you're going to have justice, you're going to do it through a judge. And you're going to pay a lot of money. And you're only going to get justice if it doesn't conflict with their own pecuniary personal interests. That's the only time we're going to give you justice, is if you pay for it and it doesn't go against what we want. Our courthouses are courts of law and courts of equity. Our legislative houses have hearing rooms in them. The Senate hearing room and House hearing rooms in there. Have several of them, like three in the Senate or 2 in the Senate and like 4 in the House. Hearing rooms down there. Our legislative houses are courts of justice. That's where the people go. But we've been denied that justice because this knowledge of a right of petition has been wiped from our collective knowledge. So we have to, all of us, get up, and whatever we would do to defend the Second Amendment right, we should even more vehemently, even more proudly and strongly defend the First Amendment right to petition for redress of grievance, and the Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Section 23, right to apply to the powers of government for redress or other proper purpose by address or remonstrance. We have to fight to get this back. So thank you for taking time with me today. If anybody has any questions, I've got a microphone up front. You're welcome to step up, and I'll give you a minute for that. God bless all of you for coming out today and taking time with me. I'm calling everybody here to duty. People that are watching on social media, later watching the recorded version, you have to stand with me. At least start calling these guys. And don't just call once and say, I'm done. Call them every day. Call them every hour. And call your senator and call your representative and say, you need to get behind restoring the right of petition. I have another one. This is my second petition that I filed. When I filed my first remonstrance, I went to the Senate, and Chief Clerk Humphreys, he just file stamped it and accepted it in there. When I went to the House, it was Chief Clerk Letzler, and she said, you have to get a member to file that for you. I'm like, where does it say that? She's like, well, that's our policy. I'm like, what policy? Hadn't been done in 170 years. She's like, nope, that's just what we do. So I took out my phone, my camera. I said, do you mind if can I get you on camera saying you're not going to accept my remonstrance? And she literally ran in her office and shut the door. She would not accept it. So I reached out to the entire Tennessee House, 98 members, emailed all of them. And I said, will somebody please file my remonstrance? It's a constitutional right I have. I didn't hear back from my representative, Johnny Garrett. He didn't respond to me. Bud Holsey, District 2, is the only one. And he allowed me to come down, even though I'm not his constituent, I'm not in his district, but he's the only one that stood up for the Constitution. And he said, come on down to my office. And so, this is a constitutional right I have. And this is part of our form of government. And I have a right to do this. And he said, well, let me go talk to some colleagues, make sure I'm not going to get my head chopped off for this. And he said, I'm not going to tell you yes, I'm not going to tell you no. And God bless that man that he filed that 5 o'clock that same night. He filed it with the clerk, and it was announced on the House floor. And there's a video of that. And in that video, and I want you guys to imagine this. So I usually play this behind me, but in that video they have the clerk of the House. He's standing up in front of 98 members of the House. He's got the speaker, up above behind him. And he said, Mr. Speaker, I have a letter from Representative Halsey. It reads, it says, Mr. Speaker, I'm approaching the House on behalf of Mr. John Gentry involving a petition of grievances. 1, unconstitutional and void statutes. 2, failure to address grievances. 3, judicial reform. 4, reinstitution of constitutionally guaranteed rights. So when they read that on the House floor, you could literally hear a pin drop. And that video is on my YouTube channel, and you can go look it up on the General Assembly website. It'll always be there. It's part of the House Journal. Imagine now that the people of this county, Lincoln County, come together, and your representative presents that. And it reads, Mr. Speaker, I'm approaching the House on behalf of 10,000 residents, good citizens of Lincoln County, demanding redress of grievance for mask mandates unlawfully imposed against them and on their children. Imagine just the feeling of that, of you having your name attached to that and filed in the House and read on the floor. When that happens, we're going to take back Tennessee. When that happens, our form of government, imagined and preserved in our Constitution by our founders, will be restored. And it will be the greatest healing that we have seen in this republic since we declared independence from Great Britain. So Thank you again. God bless all of you. My name's John Gentry. If you don't know yet, I'm a candidate for governor in 2022. God bless, God speak to us all, and in God we trust.